He manifests Himself through you, in your family, in your work, in your prayers, or not. One of the Sunnah acts that the Prophet ﷺ has directed us to is to recite and seek protection in the cave. Literally, a cave, a place of no distractions, a place of no signals, a place of isolation, and a place of reflection. And He directed us to seek that. For His journey that brought us Islam included a few stops in caves. And with every stop in a cave followed a great opening or fath for those who reflect on the Sunnah. The first cave was the cave of Hira, and came the great Namus, the great law and revelation, the perfected revelation, the completion of the divine download over a period of several thousand years, came as a result of that cave. For days and nights, with very little to eat and no one to speak to, the beloved ﷺ was sitting, reflecting, remembering, praying, purifying his noble soul and elevating it to a point where his soul touched the chief of all the angels, Jibreel alayhi salam. The opening came as a result of a cave dwelling. And that was the sign of the initiation of the intrinsic building of the Muslims. And for 13 years after that, Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was receiving the divine revelation, reciting it. Please reflect on the words, reciting, recitation. That is the repetition of citation. Reciting it upon the believers from a faithful heart, washing away all their internal stains for 13 years. 13 years, and when the souls were ready for the next step, the next stage, it was, we are talking about the Prophet. I kindly request that when I speak about the Prophet, you leave the devices in your hands and switch it off. You cannot take these devices today into a place of any security. So let's pay some respect to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. At the end of 13 years of diligent work to build the unseen aspect, the unseen part of the Muslim persona, strong foundation, strong foundation of building Iman, something we quite neglect today. Because we do not know how to build Iman. We know how to teach Islam, how to make your wudu, your salah, your ghusl, your zikr. But how do you learn Iman? An open-ended question to all the Muslims and all the scholars and all the faithful. Now they're ready. So what happens? Back to the cave. The second cave stop. So this time in the cave of Thawb, the Prophet ﷺ has brought with him a devout student. In the cave of Hira, a teacher was sent from the heavens to the Prophet ﷺ. The teacher and the student. And this time he's brought with him a student. In the first cave, the Prophet ﷺ had gone through a phase of extreme panic for what he had seen. And his Lord subhanahu wa ta'ala had brought to him the tranquility, the sakinah. In the second phase, and in the second coming to the cave, the student was frightened. And the Prophet ﷺ brought to him the sakinah. When he told him, "Fear not, for we are with him." And what can anyone do to a couple in the companionship of Allah? The people who study the biography of the Prophet need to reflect sallallahu alayhi wa sallam on the role of the caves as a point of assembly of the soul and the heart and the mind before every opening. For today we date our Muslim calendar through the day of Hijrah. The day when the permission to the Hijrah came to the Prophet ﷺ. Another cave, another opening. It is in the cave that every wali of Allah had found the light and the divine path to the truth. A great wali of Allah, Sidi al-Hasan Shadri, travels to the city in the east, all the way from the west. He crosses earth from where the sun sets to where the sun rises, to be told that what he's looking for lies exactly where he left from. Echoing the Quranic miracle and story in the surah of the cave, where Musa alayhi salam bypasses his goal without notice. And when he is reminded that the sign he was looking for had happened, he traces back his footsteps only to find the man he was looking for sitting there. A humble opinion says that he had passed him by unnoticed, because he was searching for a specific image, preconceived. And because the people of Allah throughout time and history pass unnoticed. This is Khadr alayhi salam. Unnoticed. See, Abu Hassan al-Shadri goes up to that cave. But just like the courtyard of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is surrounded with self-detectors, allowing nobody with traces of him or herself to pass through. Sayyid Abul Hassan enters the cave and finds a teacher following the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and indeed the grandson of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, telling him, "Wa alaykum as-salam, go back and make ablution and come to me." He goes and washes himself and comes back. He says, "Wa alaykum as-salam, go and do ablution and come back." And the act repeats itself over and over, as you are aware, until Sidi Abul Hassan comes to a point of realization that it is not the water cleaning that the teacher is referring to. And he looks inside, where we need to look inside, and he finds traces of himself lying in the heart, traces of his own interests lying inside. And in a split second, in a split second, Sidi Abul Hassan takes the decision, and it is a split second that separates darkness from daylight. And he makes his Astaghfirullah al-Azim, the first of the instructions of the Wird al-Am that you are repeating. This is why you have to do it at the beginning. Before you start putting La ilaha illallah into the heart, you repeat Astaghfirullah al-Azim. You repeat Astaghfirullah al-Azim 100 times, 99 times. Why? I think if Sidi Abul Hassan comes back now, he will ask you to do it, and he will ask me to do it 990 times before we start La ilaha illallah. That's why it's important to find an inheritor of Sidi Abul Hassan and Sidi Abdul Qadir, Sidi Shah Naqshband, who knows the disease, because these people were doctors of medicine of the soul, and the prescription depends on the disease and the patient. And once he finds that and cleanses his soul, he steps in, the teacher welcomes him into the cave, and then he says to him at the end of his journey of learning, "You shall now travel to a place called so and so, and you will be finding another cave, and you need to stay in that cave until your moment comes, until the opening comes." Many of us are now rushing into, okay, let's go, without taking our cave time. And then he says to him, "And then you will have to go out and speak." He says, "But I don't want to go out." He says, that's exactly why you will go out. when you don't want to be. As Sidi Abu Madian says, وَخَلِّ حَظَّكَ مَهْمَا قَدَّمُوكَ وَرَى. Keep your personal interest and yourself always behind, no matter how much they push you forward. Step to the back of the line. Another cave, another opening. This repeats itself throughout history with all the friends of Allah. A moment of assembly of the soul, reflection, followed by an opening. A moment of self-revision, followed by an opening. A moment of focus, followed by an opening. So no wonder we have to recite Surah Al-Kahf on the night of the Jum'ah, on the day of the Jum'ah. For the Prophet says to us in another hadith, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, that on the day of Jum'ah there is a time period. When the Arabs use the word sa'ah, it does not mean your 60 minutes. It means it's a window of time in which the dua is accepted. He is referring to the moment of opening. And Allah has been so kind to us to give us the cave in our homes now to recite, and the Muslims don't touch it. And they do not assemble around in the house to recite it. The ones who may, we find them sitting in the corners of a mosque with a Quran in their hands, for most of the time ticking a box in the long list of rituals that is now being ticked on a daily basis. Most. Some, may Allah bless. We wish to be amongst those. But the Prophet ﷺ describes to us that this cave will play a central role by telling us that the recitation of verses from this blessed, miraculous surah shall protect the believers when the last age arrives, and shall protect their families and shall protect their homes from the trials and tribulations of the last age. In other words, the surah is the divine prescription to protect your home, your children, your family, yourself from the trials and tribulations of the last age, and it is sitting in front of us in plain sight. So the Quran is in every home, alhamdulillah. But the Quran is a super encrypted, highly interactive, divine text that can only be decoded and decrypted by a divine light. Ar-Rahman 'allama al-Quran. It is He, Ar-Rahman, who taught the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that to us. And in this beautiful, magnificent, miraculous surah lies the protection from the trials and tribulation of the deception of the last age. And every verse and every word and every letter in the surah is divinely miraculous, with infinite meanings and reflections. that Allah can open to you with every recitation of the surah. Actually, towards the end of the surah, Allah says, if you were to record the reflections, the meanings, the words of your Lord, and the oceans where your ink, the oceans will be depleted and the words of the Lord will continue. This means they are infinite, and this means that since the Quran was revealed to the Prophet ﷺ thousands of years ago, we should have been now seeing millions and millions of miracles and meanings coming to our hearts if we had living hearts. But when we have rigid hearts, we don't see anything. We just see the letters. And we expend our lives on beautifying the letters. That's not what it is for. In the Surah of the Cave, my beloved, there are critical stories that pertain to our age now. And it would take us probably months of study before we can cover part of it. But we are here to touch some aspects, for it may open them some doors, because the keys are in His hands and the words come from Him and the hearts are in His hands, and He opens whosoever's heart He wishes. At what you may be sitting like this, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will strike you with an opening out of His mercy. That heart you gave hope, it would ever come back to life. A story about a group of young men who used to convene to discuss the state of affairs of their people, extremely disturbed by the fact that their people were polytheists, worshipping a pantheon of gods, including Allah. Those gods don't need to be statues. They could be other things that we devote time, effort, and a space in our hearts to, and constantly rotate around in a state of pilgrimage. Whether the one in the middle is the Kaaba for the faithful, or it's your office that you keep running around. Or it could be your career, or it could be your family, or even your community. For all these different words I just mentioned, for the people who know, are synonymous to yourself. Going around yourself in circles. Those people, those young men realized that fact and sought refuge from that fact, and where there were no apparent solutions to that condition, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala stopped time for them and let time continue for others. Resurrected them so that they may become ayah, so that they may become a sign for those to come. And you, my beloved, when you go that route, when you follow the Quranic instructions, time will stop for you as well. I met one man one day, may Allah bless his soul, who was describing his father, a great friend of Allah, who was describing to me his father's daily wird, what he does. And he said to me, he used to get up at 2 to 3 in the morning, do his PM, read the dua and the word of Sidi so-and-so, the dua and the word of Sheikh so-and-so, dua and the word of Sheikh so-and-so, then start on his Quran, finish the Quran he's reading, and then he gets up to pray Fajr. I said to him, this is impossible. And the poor slave here can prove that time shrunk at an accelerating rate over the past few thousand years. And those of you who have lived in the 80s and 70s and 90s can tell that time has shrunk physically. But if you are staying in one room and the entire room is minimized to 50% of its size, including you will feel nothing has changed. And time is the denominator of life. And then I said to him, no, this is impossible. How can he do that? He smiled at me and he said, oh, do you think his time is like my time and yours? I said, so how come? What is it then? He said, no. These people, Allah gave them the keys to time. They switch it on and off. And we have a dalil in Surah Al-Kahf for those who like to challenge always, because their hearts are arrogant, full of arrogance. He cannot accept that Allah can give whatever He wishes to whomever He wishes. The people of the cave, they are not prophets, by the way. So they say this is miraculous and miracles. Allah stopped time for them. For them it was one day, for others it was 309 years. And when physics come to prove to us today that time slows down near large and massive objects. Near mountains, for example, time passes fractions of a fraction of a second slower than in the valley, in the center of the valley, or in the city. Now we can believe, because we, of course, science for us is divine, so if the scientists say something, we have to believe them. So, if that is what happens when somebody sits next to a mountain, what about those who are sitting next to Allah? Do they have any time? No. They don't. They are timeless. 1,000 years after they die, their names and remembrances continue. They are timeless. Their teachings are timeless. Their footsteps are timeless. Their graves are timeless. Their offspring become timeless. Because they are friends of the timeless, subhanahu wa ta'ala. We need that. We need that in our lives now. So let's follow Sunnah, of course. The story takes us through then to describe an encounter between two people, an encounter that is so familiar to our lives today, between a man who does not have anything and another man who has two of everything, the double haves and the have-nots. The massive crack and split in social fabric. The man who has double claims to be also faithful. For he says, I'm a good man. And when I die, inshallah, I shall have more when I meet my Lord. And without taking you into details, وَمَا أَظُنُّ السَّاعَةَ قَائِمَةً. We have a reflection on that. That the man who has had nothing was telling him, can't you see that the last hour has arrived? And he said, no. It's still not. It has not. It's still not in yet. Good times. We're having perfect timing. Man is at the best point of their civilization. We're in control of everything. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as the poor man speaks of the outcome, that this denial could cause, the angels are listening to the words of the poor man who says to the rich man, don't be arrogant. What you have belongs to Allah. What you have belongs to Allah and came from Allah. We hear that discussion taking place now, and when you say that to somebody, because they are dressed up in the outside rituals, they say, of course, I know everything is coming from Allah, but it is my hard work. I worked very hard. Of course from Allah. But I worked very hard. I had a tough career. I built this, of course, by Allah. So they used Allah there to beautify the sentence, you know, like inshallah, before and after. Like brother. But if your brother needs money, he's not brother or sister. Assalamu alaikum. No brother. It's better if you call him friend, because these words, don't throw them out lightly, because they're being recorded and you're going to be questioned about your sincerity in speaking these words. ما يلفظ من قول إلا لديه رقيب عتيد. We have transcribing agents in the form of angels that have transcripts of everything, and the scrolls will be laid out in front of us. May Allah have forgiveness for what we've been saying heedlessly. Then as he speaks, he says to him, this is a gift from Allah, and before you know, you could go to bed and wake up in the morning and everything that you have, all this beauty could disappear. Allah could send a storm. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala could make the water of that garden that you have disappear. And he says to him, the angels are taking note of the poor man. It turns out this poor man is a friend of Allah. And when the friends of Allah speak, they have a special convoy of obedient angels that Allah had ordered. Do as my slave wishes. Just one night, every word the poor man said, as if he was describing it, word for word, happened. Then Allah says, in that situation, هُنَالِكَ الْوَلَايَةُ لِلَّهِ الْحَقِّ. Indeed, that is a true wilayah. in case you want to know who is the Wali Allah. The definition of Wilayatullah is right in Surah Al-Kahf. هُنَالِكَ الْوِلَايَةُ لِلَّهِ الْحَقِّ. Indeed, there lies the true wilayah. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes us through a journey at the beginning of the creation, when He ordered the angels to bow down. And please understand that when the Quran repeats a story, one, it's telling you it is very significant. So when we read a lot of times in the Quran about the disobedience and arrogance and hard-heartedness of the children of Israel, please do not think that it's there only to curse that action of theirs. It is actually telling you that this is the most dangerous path you could be falling in. So I'm repeating it again and again and again so that you know Allah is telling us not to go that path. And the Prophet ﷺ says to the Sahaba, there will come a time when you shall follow that path. Even if they go into a lizard's hole, you will go after them. So when the story of Adam and Iblis is repeated throughout the Quran, it is to explain to us, to emphasize, one, the importance of that story, the eternal enemy. Two, to explain to us that the sin of Iblis was simply his arrogance. His arrogance, which led to him being eternally cursed. This is the satanic sin. Arrogance. And where did this arrogance come from for Iblis? Why was he arrogant? Because he thought he knew. To translate this, arrogance came from his knowledge. Oh, very dangerous. Yes. But his knowledge was not complete. So the dangerous knowledge is always the incomplete knowledge. If you don't know anything, it is much better than if you know 50% of it. Because when you know 50%, if somebody comes to advise you, I know. Of course I know. Your knowledge becomes your barrier. Your knowledge becomes your metal weight that will make you sink. And at one point, one great wali of Allah told me, my son, knowledge is like a vehicle, like a taxi. Take it to reach your destination, then get out. Get off the taxi. Now we don't have a destination. We have some people in the taxi sitting. Here, you have arrived. No, I'd like to continue. Take me another round. I like this fancy car. Knowledge is to get you back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that, my beloveds, is what we need to remember. The satanic knowledge, where he thought he knows, and the arrogance to admit to the mistake, was the cause for expulsion and cursing eternally. So it looks like these stories are very pertinent. Again, about the same story, going along the line of knowledge. Because you see, the surah in any verse in the Quran, or any letter in the Quran actually, is exactly like a diamond. Wherever, depending on the angle you look at it from, you will get a different light and a different color. So you could see, for example, the theme of the surah talking about ascribing and attributing other deities. The people of the cave, the companions of the cave, thinking and feeling that their people had other deities, other entities in their hearts. The rich man who admitted to committing the sin of shirk, where he has put himself in the heart with Allah. He ascribed himself with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Shaitan, who has put his opinion and reasoned the divine order, elevating himself to a divinic level where he can argue the divine order. Or you can look at the surah from another angle, like a diamond, and you will see that knowledge. When the companions of the cave went to the cave, they said, "What can we do? We can do nothing." They admitted to their complete inability. They admitted to their complete lack of knowledge to yield a solution, and Allah found them the solution. The rich man thought he knew. No, I know. Allah took it away. Shaitan and Satan thought he knew better, took it away. And now there is a prophet of Allah. Ya Allah, be pleased with him and our Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Sayyidina Musa. It is narrated that he stands up and gives a big khutbah for Bani Israel and speaks to them and reminds them of how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saved them and how they should be thankful and how they should come close to Allah. And a man stands up and says, "On earth now, Messenger of Allah, is there anyone more knowledgeable than you?" In another narration, who is the most knowledgeable man on earth? Sayyidina Musa says, "I am the one that Allah chose me to converse with, to receive the law." And he speaks of what he knew. So he says to him, "It's me." And after the khutbah is finished, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends a revelation to Musa telling him, "No, it's not you. That's what you know. There are others that I've given knowledge, not similar to the one that you have received." So Sayyidina Musa, in the humility, he's a prophet. A prophet. Prophet, not sheikh, or shake, or milkshake. Huh? Not that. He's a prophet. He is the prophet. When he hears that, he steps down immediately in humility, begging Allah to show him the way to go and learn. Go where? You're going to leave Bani Israel? You're going to leave the Ummah? You're going to leave everything? Yes, I will leave everything. And indeed, he says to his servant and assistant, "I shall travel the earth, even if I continue to travel until my life expires. I am going until I reach that point of convergence, Majma' al-Bahrain. I will reach a point where the two seas, two oceans meet. I will reach a point where, at that point, you are in both oceans at the same time. when you stand at that point. I will reach a point where the water that comes to you is coming to you from two oceans, making you the assembly point of the oceans. Because a man is made up of water, a water-based creature. And water, whenever mentioned in the Quran, it is always related to mercy. So be careful when you read in the Quran. You need to understand that when Allah speaks of His creatures, water, mountains, these have direct parallels in your life. They're not just, He's not just describing to you some natural scene or like a documentary about nature. No, no. This Quran is shifa, it's a cure to the heart. So when the water is mentioned, find out what does this do to you and your fellow human beings, and the mountains, and each one of those have a clear direction and instruction to the person who's reciting. Reaches that point, Sayyidina Musa, and we describe. And the journey is very long, and as I said, it has a lot to reflect on. Maybe inshallah some other time, if Allah allows us and permits us and supplies us, we can talk about this. But what I want to draw your attention is that as soon as he finds that man, he says, he starts to literally beg him to allow him to follow, begging. And the man says, you can't. The kind of knowledge that you receive will not allow you to withstand my lifestyle. Because I roam the earth and I travel the earth. So what was the job of Khidr alayhi salam? We got a glimpse of his role on earth. Apparently he was moving all the time, because Allah describes this with the word فَانْطَلَقَ. Off they went. The translation of انطلق. Off they went. Off they go. Off they go. Off they go. What was he doing in these towns? He, whether when he went to the harbor with the fishermen, or he went to that town where there was this young boy, or he went to the town where he found the collapsing structure that he put back together. Apparently, wallahu a'lam, he was enacting Allah's will on the planet. To enact Allah's will on the planet in earth is to represent the original mission you were created for. I ask the question all the time, and I mostly get the wrong answer. Why did Allah create us? And mostly I get the answer, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. A misunderstood ta'weel of that verse. That He created us only to worship Him, as in the ritual, external sense of worship. Allah had other angels, other creatures like the angels, Allah has created with perfected acts of worship. They don't make a mistake. So your creation, hasha lillah, to be a repetition of that. The reason why you were created is very clear and in plain sight throughout the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنِّي جَاعِلٌ فِي الْأَرْضِ خَلِيفَةً. I shall send a deputy to earth. So Khidr alayhi salam was enacting, he was doing his job. Roaming the earth, fixing, sometimes breaking, but putting things in place and moving on. And Sayyidina Musa alayhi salam could not withstand that journey. For you can only withstand what you know. What you do not know is beyond your and my capacity, one's capacity. Our mind does not comprehend this. And in that surah, in that story, and I will close with that remark, lies a miraculous challenge to all the ulama of the ummah until today. And if you read all the books of tafsir, you will find no clear answer to that miraculous challenge. Here is a man of Allah who became the teacher of one of the greatest, and at the time the greatest prophet that walked the earth, that the Prophet ﷺ, even our Prophet, spoke about him and said that Musa ﷺ, do not compare me to Musa, and let's not try this competition between the prophets. He's teaching his followers to stay away from that argumentational nonsense. But we have a lot of people now who still go into this, despite the advice of the Prophet ﷺ, who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given him a special rank, the best of all ranks, and has given him special virtues and qualities not given to any other prophets. But he gave the other prophets also some special qualities, some of which he did not give to Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You see, the people are unable to understand that they all are one body. So what your hand does is different from what your ears. What your hand does is different from what your ears do. But in that story, the man of Allah and the Prophet of Allah, the man of Allah is actually making some acts that are clearly opposite to the law of Allah, the Sharia. He killed a young man. He caused damage to somebody's property. We need the jurists to answer the question. There is no answer. How does that work? It's one of those open challenges. The Quran has open challenges until the end of time. And the reason why those open challenges are there in the Quran, to tell you that the only way you can get an answer to this dilemma is if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala inspires you and whispers in your ears the answer. To point you to Ar-Rahman allama al-Quran. And that is an eternal challenge that proves that the miraculous nature of the Quran is infinite and will continue to echo after time itself folds its pages. The journey of knowledge and seeking knowledge, after speaking about the half-filled knowledge, people, points us that in the end of times, in the end stage, in the last age, a cave needs to be found. A cave needs to be found to seek the knowledge, to purify the self from other deities that we worship secretly inside. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to open our hearts and minds and eyes and ears to receive His wisdom, His light, and to purify us from the stains of this age that are staining our lives and staining our hearts, to make our words and our work sincere. Remove us from the spotlight. Make us in the back lines to serve, to learn, to touch the lives of people around us, with humility and light, and depart in peace to arrive at his peaceful courtyard, and to have mercy on our souls and the souls of our parents and our teachers and those who passed away from our families, and on this ummah and all of the world by his grace and mercy and gifts. آمين. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. الفاتحة. بسم الله. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. I can't see actually, I need my glasses.